Is something the matter? Oh, how rude of me. Fluda took a seat facing Momon. Still, he couldn't help glancing at Nabe out of the corner of his eye. Ah, I see. Well, shall we begin? Begin what? Before Fluda could ask, Momon continued, Nabe, maybe it's about time you took off your ring. Understood. She took off her ring. That moment it was like being hit with a bomb blast. Wah, he thought he might scream. Nabe was giving off an overpowering amount of energy. It wasn't as if he could feel actual air pressure. This was a torrent of power only people with the same talent as Fluda could see. He curled up and shivered like someone being blown on by a northerly wind. This can be. It's just not possible. This kind of power, greater than his own, shouldn't have existed. And yet, he couldn't force the rest of his denial out. The scene before his eyes was reality. His ability had never betrayed him before. That meant it was true that this woman's power far surpassed his own. Tier 7. No, could this immense rush of energy be proof of Tier 8? If that were the case, she had reached the mythological realm. Fluda could no longer speak. The 5th tier of magic was the heroic realm, and the 6th tier, which Fluda had reached, was untrodden territory. Someone who could nevertheless effortlessly enter the next tier had suddenly appeared before him. No wonder he was speechless. And she was such a pretty young lady. Maybe her appearance didn't reflect her age. As he trembled with astonishment, Fluda noticed out of the corner of his eye that Momon was removing his black gauntlets. Then he took off one of his rings. For an instant, the world whited out in a flash. Fluda had the feeling he had lost consciousness. What had just happened was incomprehensible. Even Fluda, who had been alive over 200 years, who could use the highest tier of magic humans had ever reached, could not understand it. WH, what in the world? Something hot flowed onto Fluda's cheeks, but he had neither the presence of mind nor the energy to wipe it away. The shock was upsetting. Who could have predicted it? Who could have guessed that the man hailed as the Dark Warrior was actually an arcane caster at a level Fluda could only dream of? If she's Tier 8, then Tier 9. No, what? Oh dear gods, the overwhelming amount of energy bursting from Momon the Dark Warrior easily transcended Nabe's. If he is beyond Nabe, who is at Tier 8, then how high is the tier he uses? The question from a corner of his brain was answered by his soul. The 10th tier, it was the absolute realm, presumed to exist, but which no one had ever confirmed. A being from that supreme realm had arrived before him. Fluda had stood and now kneeled before Momon, tears still streaming down his face. I believed in lesser deities who governed magic. However, if you are not one of them, my faith has just been extinguished because a true god has just appeared before me. Fluda vigorously prostrated himself, banging his head into the floor. The pain was nothing compared to the joy in his heart. I realize it is impertinent, but you have my gratitude in advance. Please grant me your wisdom. I wish to peer into the abyss of magic, I beg you. And how much will you pay for it? The voice was cold like a sheet of ice. Anyone would have agreed it was cold, but Fluda could only hear sweet music. He knew it was toxic, but what did that matter? He would pay any price, with zero hesitation, even offer his soul. Everything. Yes, I will give everything I have to you, my lord, master of the abyss, the ever-profound one. Very well. If you will give me everything, then I will make my knowledge yours. I'll grant your wish. Oh, Fluda cried, tears of joy, still grinding his head into the floor. His heart, which had been a hard nugget of envy, melted. He had been waiting over 200 years, but the possibility of realizing his dream was finally at hand. Ecstatic with excitement, he edged toward Aints without raising his head and kissed his master's greaves. He had originally planned to lick them, but he worried it would displease this god, so he compromised by taking a tip from a composed corner of his mind. He decided to simply acknowledge their devotion. Oh, thank you, master. Your first order is to send sacrifices to my castle. Gramps, what is wrong, Gramps? Fluda, lost in thought, came back to himself at the sound of a voice calling him. The shocking encounter from several days before still loomed large in his mind. It beckoned him to a fantasy land if he relaxed his focus. Fluda blinked several times and remembered where he was. Then he bobbed his head to the one addressing him. I beg your pardon, your Imperial Majesty. I was just thinking. There was only one person who called Fluda Gramps the Emperor of the Baharuth Empire, Jerkniv Rune Farlord Elnix, and this was his office. Normally, the room didn't have so many people in it, but today it was unusually crowded. There was Jerkniv himself, along with 4 guards. Fluda Paradine, the Empire's most powerful wizard, was also present. 10 of Jerkniv's most trusted retainers were there, sharp enough to supplement even the Emperor's unparalleled intelligence. Lightning Baswood Peshmal, one of the 4 strongest knights in the Empire, was also present. They all sat where they pleased and had been debating imperial policy. The papers scattered everywhere showed how heated the meeting had become. Some of the participants were even starting to lose their voices. The young emperor, also known as the Fresh Blood Emperor, said something to Fluda that he never said to anyone. He said, "Don't worry about it. I cause a lot of trouble for you. I do like to hold back a bit since you're getting older, but I can seem to help but rely on you. Forgive me. I am grateful for your kind consideration, your imperial majesty, but I am your faithful servant. Please order me without compunction." Fluda accepted the emperor's sentiments and bowed slightly. He's grown into a fine young man, thought Fluda, looking at the handsome youth. Fluda had begun serving the empire about 6 generations previous. He hadn't gotten along with the emperor at the time, 6 emperors ago. Still, his elite magic ability found him in one of the highest positions at court almost immediately after he was invited. Consequently, he became a little closer with the following emperor. At the same time he was granted the position of principal court wizard, he began educating the emperor's heir in magic. 3 emperors ago, he began passing on all sorts of wisdom as a more general teacher and became deeply involved in policy. Then came the current emperor, who was so precious to him. Fluda had witnessed generations of emperors, and not a single one was incompetent. Each of them seemed chosen by the gods in their excellence. They were all children blessed with aptitude, although the first one he served was in the prime of his life. Even in that splendid company, the current emperor was exceedingly bright. His ability was the reason they were able to declare the country an absolute monarchy after 2 generations of work. Fluda loved Jerkniv Rune, Farlord El Nix. He poured himself into his education as if he were his own son. He was sure the emperor thought of him as a second father too. Still, even if he loved him like his own son, he would cut him off. He wanted to peer into the abyss of magic Jur. To do that, there was nothing he wouldn't abandon, even a charming boy like you. So, Your Imperial Majesty, are you all right with completely cancelling this season's invasion of the kingdom? Yeah, looking into that demon Jaldabaoth is more important. Gramps, did you come up with anything? I am afraid not, Your Imperial Majesty. We were looking, but we haven't found any documentation. Yes, that was his story. So Paradine, can you not investigate using magic? Fluda put on a prudent expression and half closed his eyes. Certainly magic possesses omnipotent potential, but sorry, Gramps, you tend to ramble about that stuff. Better skip ahead. Understood, Your Imperial Majesty. Fluda looked disappointed and continued in the tone of a teacher instructing a dull-witted child. There are ways to counter magical searches. For instance, do you know the walls of this room have a barrier to keep sound from escaping? There are other examples. Detection magic obstruction is one. So there are all sorts of methods for countering, and that makes it difficult, yes. And we would have to consider ourselves lucky if our spell getting negated were the end of it. Casters in higher realms sometimes prepare counterattacks against detection magic spells that could even kill someone if they weren't careful. What use could my level of magic be to the Supreme One? There is truly no one more worthy of the word Supreme One than him. I must show him I can be useful. As soon as possible, several people made sour faces when he mentioned that one could be instantly killed in a counterattack. But Fluda wasn't interested in their opinions. In that case, one of the retainers picked up a sheet of paper. Does the fact that you managed to locate what appears to be the base of the caster Aints Ulgaun mean that you are superior to him? Don't be naive. He suppressed a bitter grin and spoke forcefully so they would sense his irritation. You're being too optimistic. When we noticed that he had saved the village of Khan, or rather, only the village of Khan, we were monitoring the entire vicinity. We discovered the ruins, and since we had never heard of them before, we continued monitoring. We just happened to see the caster Aints Ulgaun enter them. You'll land yourself in trouble if you forget that it was nothing more than serendipity. He meant it in part. Only a fool would take the Supreme One lightly. He done it too, but it was pitiful to be ignorant. Fluda inwardly sneered at his previous foolish self. What a truly dark time that was. I beg your pardon. Fluda accepted the apology with a raised hand. Oh, speaking of which, Gramps, what happened with the workers we sent in? I received the first report via message from a spy who tailed them, and it appears they've been wiped out. Jerkniv counted the days on his fingers, and his eyes widened just a little. He had heard they sent multiple outstanding teams. If they were all annihilated in a day, or even half a day, that would be surprising. Fluda wasn't surprised, though. He thought it was a natural outcome, but he put on a face of disbelief. Really? Still, we can rely only on magic intelligence. When will the adventurers be back? They withdrew immediately when no one returned. It will take about 4 more days. So to get information from the returned adventurers, it will take at least 5 days. I guess we can make any moves during that time then. Message was not a very reliable source of intelligence. The farther away someone was, the harder it was to hear them. There were other reasons many nations didn't trust the spell for important matters. The most famous incident was probably the tragedy of the country called Gattenberg. Gattenberg was a human nation of mainly casters. 300 years ago, they made it possible to rapidly share information by connecting its cities with message. They trusted message too much. Just 3 pieces of false intelligence plunged the country into civil war. The cities fought one another, then monsters and subhumans attacked. This caused the country to fall to ruin. The bards sang many tragic tales. One was about the man who killed his wife after hearing she was unfaithful, but it turned out to be a lie. For all those reasons, few people trusted message. People who trusted it too much were often called fools. Jerkniv was one of the people who didn't put much faith in the spell. He did use it, but he made it a rule to have an additional source for his information. He never relied solely on magic, but what an idiot he was. If he had hired a worker team from Rantel, things would have gone more our way. His incompetence is why we can have him dance in the palm of our hand, but at the same time, it's a problem if he is too incompetent. We need him to be a better decoy. It's just as you say, Your Imperial Majesty. Jerkniv furrowed his brow at Fluda's agreement. The plan they had created after accepting Fluda's proposal at a meeting several days ago had 2 objectives. One was to grasp Aints Ulgaun's personality. Fluda had noticed that Aints Ulgaun's presence hadn't moved from the ruins for a few days. This led them to conclude the ruins were the caster's base. So they sent the worker teams in to gauge Aints' reaction. How would he react to someone intruding into his home moderately or severely? From the fact that the workers had been wiped out, they had grasped one facet of his personality. The other object was to sour the relationship between Aints Ulgaun and the kingdom. They would have preferred to hire workers from Rantel, but unfortunately, that's not how it happened. He wasn't that stupid. The only information that had gone to the Count was that there were some unexplored ruins. It took guts to hire kingdom workers for the shady purpose of ransacking ruins in kingdom territory on behalf of a noble from the Empire. Hiring workers from the Empire was the best they could have expected him to do. But that wouldn't sour the relationship between Aints Ulgaun and Rantel, much less the relationship between him and Ray Estes as a whole. So to accomplish the second goal, they had to make sure word of the ruins got to the Adventurers Guild in the kingdom as well. Momones' visit to the Empire worked in our favor. It sure did. He'll probably be the one to tell the guild over there that the workers were all killed in those unexplored ruins. Once they know the Empire is targeting the ruins, they'll get serious and mount their own expedition. They had shoehorned adventurers into this plan expressly for that purpose. Of course, they hadn't exercised the Emperor's authority at all. They had used spies to spread intelligence. They had to make sure the story of this incident ended simply as one lone noble acting recklessly. That way, even if the Empire's involvement came out, Aints Ulgaun's anger would be directed at the Count they had manipulated. Jerkniv would then be able to work things to his favor. So we'll have kingdom adventurers invading the residence of Aints Ulgaun, who is known to react severely. How will this immensely powerful caster respond to the kingdom, and what will the guild do after he inflicts his revenge on them? He looked forward to it. Jerkniv smiled and then confirmed just to be sure, so we understand the power of Aints Ulgaun. He is strong enough to obliterate worker teams with no trouble, and we can pin all this neatly on one stupid noble, right? Of course. We were very discreet, so only the people in this room know what really happened. Okay, that's fine then. I just wanted to A vibration like the rumbling of the earth interrupted him. The furniture shook, and the windows rattled, but it didn't feel like an earthquake. It sounded like something huge had crashed into the ground with one big jolt. What was that? Find out what a racket. What's going on? Jerkniv could hear screams coming from not only inside the room, but outside as well. The room had thick, sturdy walls, so the voice had to be incredibly loud. Or was it more than one voice? What could have caused such a shriek in this place? A guard who had peeked through a gap in the curtains into the courtyard, where the screams seemed to be coming from, answered with a pale face. Your Imperial Majesty, it's a dragon. A dragon has landed in the courtyard. For a moment everyone was dazed. They couldn't understand what had just been said. Well, how could they? Though they knew he wouldn't lie, they all rushed to the window to confirm with their own eyes. They practically ripped the curtains off the window, they yanked them so hard. When they looked through the semi-transparent glass and saw the dragon sitting imposingly in the middle of the courtyard, all their jaws dropped. Why is there a dragon here? Where did it come from? Foreign Affairs Minister. Was anyone outrageous enough to ride a dragon into our courtyard supposed to visit today? No, I've heard nothing of the sort. Have you ever met the dragons from the Council State? Is it one of those? It doesn't look anything like descriptions I've heard, and I heard them from a diplomat, so they should be reliable. Still, the biggest problem is how it was allowed to penetrate this far. The Emperor is here. What is the Imperial Air Guard doing? With tough bodies wrapped in hard scales, lifespans far longer than humans, and magical ability on top of various skills, dragons were the most powerful beings in the world. Of course, their strength ran the gamut. There was no lack of dragons slain by adventurers, but looking back through history, it wasn't rare for cities or even whole countries to be destroyed by angry dragons. The destruction of a city in a country to the south 20-odd years ago was still fresh in everyone's memory. One of those fearsome beings landing in the courtyard of the Imperial Palace was an unthinkable emergency. Even Jerkniv himself was swallowing hard. He waited to see what would happen when two small figures got off the dragon. If he squinted, he could make out two children with brown skin like they had suntans. They must be dark elves. Fluda calmly stated the pair's race. So Paradine, what is that dragon? Who are those elves? Well, I don't know this dragon. Either knights surrounded the children who had dismounted, as well as the dragon itself, as a matter of protocol. The knights were the Empire's pride, but they looked awfully unreliable opposite a dragon. It truly was the strongest creature in existence. From the knights' ranks, one man stepped forward. He held a shield in each hand. Whoa, he's going. Well, he's the only one who really could, but wouldn't it be a shame to lose him? The one who approached the dragon was unshakable Nazami Enek. He was one of the Empire's top fighters. People said he was the strongest of the four in a defensive battle. He was resistant to many different types of energies, but he looked utterly flimsy compared to the dragon. Everyone nodded in response to the comment that seemed to imply it was Lightning Basswood Peshmal's comrade's final hour. Your Imperial Majesty, please evacuate. Where would I go? Where's even safe? The retainer regained composure at Jerkniv's scoffing reply. But I get it. I get what you're trying to say. But I'd be a laughing stock if I fled the Imperial Palace, even if we were up against a dragon. It doesn't seem like a Council State dragon, but if it did this knowing, I wouldn't be able to run away. I've heard dragons are clever, but this one appears informed of our political situation as well. He was purging the nobles. This relied on the military strength of the knights. If word got out that he abandoned the castle when a dragon appeared, there was a good chance the nobles would think, so that's the extent of his power, and rebel all at once. He wasn't about to let a mob defeat him, but the Empire would still lose a chunk of its might. Whether I fight or run, it'll end in a loss. What a nasty move to make. Who is that dragon? More people had gathered in the courtyard. There were 40 men from the Emperor's guard and 60 knights, plus there were arcane and faith casters. I am not sure 120 people is enough. I think I should go too, Your Imperial Majesty. Jerkniv furrowed his brow slightly. Fluda was the Empire's greatest trump card. Jerkniv wasn't sure if it would be profitable to play him against a dragon. What finally ended his hesitation was his belief that Fluda would surely be able to escape in a worst-case scenario. But Jerkniv didn't know that Fluda volunteered to go to avoid having to teleport the Emperor to safety. Thanks, Gramps. If possible, can you get Unshakable to fall back? Understood. However, our opponents are unfathomable. They may be astonishingly powerful, so you should prepare to run. With that, Fluda flung open the window. Then he threw himself into the air and flew up into the sky with a flying spell. Ah, can everyone hear me all right? I am Aurabella Fiora, servant of Aints Ul Gown. Just then an incredibly loud voice echoed out. The emperor of this place sent some rude guys to Lord Aints' home, the great tomb of Nazarick. Lord Aints is not amused. So if the Emperor Dosen T come to apologize, we LL destroy the country. Jerkniv grimaced.